And we are joined right now by political analyst Brian Sobel. Brian, the race is really taking shape. It was so fascinating last night on both sides. Let's start right now on the Democratic side. A razor-thin victory, as Frank mentioned, for Hillary Clinton. Did those results surprise you?
Yes, they did, in the sense that Hillary Clinton has been putting a ground game out in Iowa for a very long time. Great name recognition. And you remember, Julie, about 3 months ago, Sanders was back 30 points or so. And to surge the way that he did really has taken the race and turned it upside down.
Brian, I still hear a lot of people, though, say Bernie Sanders, in the end, has no chance. What do you think about that? Is he at least going to push Hillary Clinton? And let's just say, for the sake of argument, that Hillary Clinton does win the nomination. How much does the fact that Bernie Sanders pushed her so much affect her in the general election?
Frank, first of all, I think there's no doubt but that Hillary Clinton ends up with the nomination at the end of the day for all kinds of reasons, including the age of Bernie Sanders, 74 years old, and the superior ground forces that Hillary has arrayed around the country. But what this does is it takes Hillary Clinton's agenda and it slides it more to the progressive side of things when she's going to want to quickly move to bring Republicans around. And so this is going to freeze her in her place to battle it out with Bernie Sanders. And that's going to be an X factor in this race.
Brian, let's turn things over to the Republican side now. The polls showed Donald Trump as the front runner going into Iowa, but Ted Cruz came out on top by several points. What does that say about Ted Cruz's ground game versus Donald Trump's ground game in Iowa?
Well, Donald Trump didn't have much of a ground game in Iowa. He did media events and that sort of thing, but Ted Cruz had 12,000 volunteers out there, and he's been working the state for a very long time, visited all 99 counties in Iowa. So Ted Cruz really put a huge emphasis on this race. Conversely, Marco Rubio didn't spend a lot of time in the state, and yet he, to me, last night was the biggest surprise, the biggest winner, because he established himself as one of the front runners on the Republican side, and of course Donald Trump tumbled to second place.
We all know that Iowa doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get the nomination. Right. Just ask Rick Santorum, just ask Mike Huckabee. But Donald Trump losing here, he had this aura of invincibility.
Yes.
How big a deal is this that he lost, and what does that do to that aura of invincibility?
Well, I think it shakes it. And the other thing to keep in mind is that we've been saying this and we've all talked about this for a while. It's one thing to shop for something and then to buy. And in the case of Donald Trump, I think people were interested in his message. That he says things that a lot of people won't say out loud. But when it comes time to actually write the name and drop it into the caucus hat in Iowa, or to walk in New Hampshire voting booths and vote for him, that's a whole other thing. And that was always going to be where the rubber was going to meet the road. And Trump, in his speech last night, went from an I to a we, and you know, it was a different kind of speech. It was there was a lot of humility there because he did get knocked down, and I think this is going to start being the trend as we move forward.
Brian, let's talk for a minute about the turnout. There was a record turnout,
yes.
Overflow crowds. What do you think we'll see going into New Hampshire? A lot of people in Iowa weren't decided until right the last minute. Do you think we'll see that type of crowd situation coming up next week?
Yes, and it's exciting. On the Democratic side, you have a lot of people who are really getting behind the Sanders movement, and that would be young people and people who don't feel like the government belongs to them, and they don't care for the rich and Wall Street folks dominating things. And then on the Republican side, you have Donald Trump, who you can't deny is a media attraction. And so you're going to have a lot of people coming out in New Hampshire. It's going to be a very interesting result that night.
It sure is. Brian, as always, we appreciate your thoughts. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.